I'm Tory Bowman, and you're watching Underestimated, a show about breaking barriers for people with disabilities. Underestimated is brought to you by Cortree, a division of Spinal Cord Injury Ontario. On this episode of Underestimated, we're talking about aging with a disability and specifically mental health. Oda speaks with Dr. Swati Mehta about aging and emotional well-being. I sit down with Randy Upper to learn about his experience, and near the end of the show, we get to know some of the free local programs offered to help manage mental health and chronic conditions. Stay with us.
We are thrilled today to welcome Dr. Swati Mehta. Dr. Mehta is a registered psychotherapist, and she is interested in improving access to evidence-based mental health services for those undergoing rehabilitation through online health programs. Welcome, Dr. Mehta.
Thanks, Oda.
So let's start with telling me about your area of research and the need for improved access to mental health services for people undergoing rehab.
Yeah, what we find in research and just in Canada in general is that as people with disability go through the rehab process, they usually have access to allied health, such as physiotherapy and occupational therapy. However, those seeking mental health really don't have that access. A recent survey found that only 2 to 4% had access to mental health during their rehab process. And so what one of my research interests is to provide that access to services that are evidence-based through online services that are a little bit more sustainable than some of the face-to-face options.
So your research focuses on online health programs.
Yes.
For someone who hasn't tried that before, what should they expect? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different from face-to-face because it's very self-directed as opposed to, going into a face-to-face session. You're kind of sometimes accountable to yourself and trying to get, a lot of that work done online by yourself. But a lot of our programs do have that accountability by having a clinician guide that process with you and practice some of those skills that you would have in a face-to-face counseling type session. And so in the beginning, I would say, it might be a learning curve to get online and kind of get used to being on the computer. But I think once people get on board and have, that conversation with the clinician and even get to know other peers online and kind of develop a sense of community that's more digital than face-to-face, they really get involved and they start to feel that, they're welcome online as well. And so that's what we've been trying to aim for, kind of creating that online digital community.
That's great to hear, and that's really important, especially nowadays. Mm-hmm. So you say it's self-directed, and that's extremely important. I'm a proponent of everything self-directed, taking care of your own health, but what is a bias or stereotype that can get in the way of someone seeking help?
Yeah, I think there's lots of stereotypes and lots of stigma still related to, accessing mental health and even just acknowledging that maybe you do need to seek help. Sometimes one of the stigmas that I feel people experience is that people think that because they've got the disability, it's okay and it's normal to have a mental health issue, to not be able to cope with some of the stresses that they're experiencing, that it's just normal and it's because of the disability. But yes, it's normal to kind of experience some of those concerns and have the issues with grief and adjustment. But I think if they seek help, they can kind of learn different coping skills and ways of adjusting that can really help them get out of that and find like a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning in their life that can get them going again in their quality of life and daily activities of living. And so that myth that, just because now I have a disability, it's okay and it's normal for me to be depressed or anxious is not necessarily the case, and it's really helpful to kind of reach out there and kind of get the help that you might need. The other myth that I often see among people is that, only people that are weak are going to be the ones that seek help for mental health, and that's not the case. I think most of us experience stress in our lives, and sometimes we don't have the skills to cope with that. And so that doesn't make you weaker, it just means maybe you need more tools in your tool belt to kind of help you adjust and things like that.
I definitely think it's important to seek the resources that are available to you and take advantage of them. Mm-hmm. I think that's great. So switching gears a little bit, I wanted to ask you, from your research and what you know, what is the interconnection between aging, disability, and mental health?
Yeah, that's a really important topic because I think people with disability tend to have accelerated aging related to the disability or just in general. Maybe people with spinal cord injury might have, issues such as osteoporosis or even cardiovascular health that kind of makes their aging process a little bit accelerated. And that can cause a lot of people to feel burdened and feel less independent than they normally would. And so, mental health really becomes an important part of the piece where they have to learn to cope with some of those secondary complications that kind of occur as they're aging with their disability. And so trying to kind of learn those skills to manage that aging process is really important. And, even roles can change as we age, but, with the disability, it gets even harder to adapt to those changes in roles as we're aging. And so being able to adapt to not just normal living, but also the issues with disability and aging is really important.
For sure, right. That's really important. What kind of obstacles do people have especially with online? Do you find people have obstacles joining, or what obstacles?
Yes, online, I think one of the fears people have is that they're not going to be able to connect to their clinician or other peers online as they would in face-to-face, right? Like, we're so used to being in person, we're used to having a community where we meet each other face-to-face, and now, especially with COVID, we've had to change things up and do so many things online through Zoom and other digital platforms. And so I think one of the fears people have is it's not that same, connection that people can have. And I think once they get going, it's really important to see that you could still have that same connection either through video chat or telephone, because sometimes it's about the personal touch and having that conversation. It doesn't matter if you're face to face or if you're not. Even when you don't see the body language, if you're doing a telephone call, you really still see the tone of the individual and the conversations you're having. And so that really helps you also connect to the other individual. And if you're doing things like video chatting, you could still put it one step further, and you could still see, a lot of the body languages, a lot of the laughter, and the nervousness and things like that. So you could still kind of connect, and it really helps people, especially those that don't have access to services. Maybe they can't find a ride to a rehab facility, they live far away, and there's no specialized services for them. And so this really provides them with the opportunity to connect with someone at a level that maybe they won't have if they weren't able to kind of go online.
I really appreciate that perspective. So my final question I'll leave you with, what's it like from your perspective, the online? Has there been any obstacles or advantages that you can share with us?
Yeah, I find a lot of people will say things like, I'm not sure if online is for me. People that are older and not tech savvy will say, I don't really know how to use the computer. I don't even know how to connect to a digital video conferencing platform. Right. And what I say is, we're always here to help you. If you need help to get onboarded and get started, one of our first sessions is just getting you acquainted to the computer system, kind of get you going and help you understand that, once you do it a few times, it's just a skill that you learn, and we're always here to help you through that process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehta. I appreciate your time. And where can people go to learn more about online mental health services?
Yeah, so our website is rehabpsych.sjhc.london.on.ca. And I think you could see our logo as well to see where we can get services.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mehta.
Thank you.
Randy Upper sustained a spinal cord injury more than 30 years ago. Today, he works as a health educator, providing clinical support to people with neurological conditions. Welcome, Randy.
Hi.
So you bring clinical expertise as a master's trained social worker and personal experience living with a spinal cord injury for more than 30 years. When it comes to aging, spinal cord injury, and mental health, what's it like to have that perspective?
Well, it's interesting to have that perspective because it showed, like, prior to my getting to an elderly or older age, I was able to see from my clients some of the issues that they experience and what's going to maybe anticipated for myself when it comes to aging, but also very much learned that just like every spinal cord injury, no two are alike. So no two people age the same, and no two people cope with how they age the same.
So it sounds like you saw some things, but also it could have had nothing in common with your own experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a big time what I've experienced, actually, yeah.
So what have you learned over the years about mental health and aging?
Well, when it comes to myself, honestly, I didn't think it was going to impact me all that much. I was very lucky and went for the vast majority of my 34 years since my injury with having very few medical problems. So I really thought that I was going to be more immune to some of the things that I had seen. So when some of the impacts or some of the issues came up, it impacted me emotionally and mentally a lot harder than I really thought it would.
What came up for you, if you're comfortable? Just
yeah,
an
sure.
example,
No, I've had pain since the very beginning of the injury, and I was always able to find ways to manage that without the use of medication. But then there was a point where the pain became so bad that it was really affecting my quality of life. And so that really hit me hard. I felt like getting onto the part of taking medication was a failure. It was something like I was no longer able to control. And also shoulder problems. I've done a lot of sports, a lot of different activities, and people always said, be careful of your shoulders, be careful of your shoulders. And I thought, oh no, my shoulders are good, they're healthy. And then they really started to go, and I've actually had surgery on one of them, which took 2 years to bounce back from. So yeah, there are just a lot of issues such as, and the weight gain. I mean, how I used to identify or how I saw myself was a very active, athletic person, and also my body image was really important to me. And then so here I am now in more pain. I can't be as physically active because of my shoulders, and with age and with the lack of activity came a lot of weight gain. And so kind of my personal, how I image myself, how I saw myself really changed a lot.
So what does your mental health routine look like now?
Well, thankfully, when I was first injured, I had a counselor who used a lot of CBT as a part of helping me deal with. I was a very angry person when I was first hurt.
Can you just do a quick, what is CBT? Just in case people
cognitive
may not know.
behavioral therapy.
Okay.
So it's a type of therapy that is practice-based, and it really looks at how your thinking, your behavior, and in this case your emotions are all linked together. So it was what she did is she worked with me on what were some of the source of some of my thoughts regarding where I was now, being in a chair, I was 20, and being paralyzed from the chest down, really helped me get a hold of some of my ableist thoughts that I brought with me to the disabled world. And how to really, it's like reframing how I was thinking, and the impact that also then had on my emotions, which then impacted my behavior, and then the cycle happens. So it was, and I didn't realize that's what she was doing until I went to school. So I was in psychology, and we took the section on CBT, and I went,
wait a second,
that's what she was doing to me. So I fortunately, those tools that she taught me, like back in 1989, are things that I've always carried forward since then, and sometimes I need a reminder and a refresher on that. So one thing that I have is I have my own therapist.
Okay.
So, and like I say, every good therapist needs a therapist. So I have my own therapist. I also make sure that I always have a purpose, that I always have goals for myself, because we all need purpose. We all need a reason to be. And so I'm always setting goals for myself, and actively pursuing those, I think, really gives me that sense of self-worth again. I also make sure that I incorporate physical activity into my daily routine. And again, one that is good for my shoulders, so we do a lot of hand cycling. And then there's also a lot of relaxation, so deep breathing type stuff that I do, and meditation type relaxation activities. So that's what, and there's also, and this is really, my wife is huge when it comes to helping me with my relaxation too, because she's very good at identifying when my anxiety is getting to a point before I realize it. So I really find that physical contact really helps too. So she's a big part of that.
Yeah, like grounding. I find that too.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned a little bit back was ableist thoughts. I was wondering if you could give just one example, maybe unpack what that is in case that language is new to.
Okay, so when I would say like my ableist thoughts, that the people with disabilities cannot participate in various sports. They cannot participate in, for me a big one was when I had my daughter. Like there was this big belief that, there's no way, how are you going to be able to raise a daughter on your own? And it turned out I was a stay-home dad that was able to modify my entire world so that I had absolutely no problem being a dad. So it brings into it discounts disability and access and creates all kinds of barriers. And so that's,
Okay.
I think what I brought with me was a lot of, I'm no longer capable because I have a disability. And it was really hard to get over at first.
That's not a good story to be telling yourself.
No.
So if you could go back, or if you could give advice, both to yourself, thinking of that negative story you were telling yourself, and to others as well, for how to protect your physical and mental health, maybe being kind to yourself, what would your advice be?
Physically, get out there and do things. Get out there and try and experiment. I don't think I would change a single thing that I've done physically, even though downhill skiing I broke my back a second time. My shoulders, I think what happened to those, it accelerated difficulties because of how hard I trained, because I raced with hand cycles for a while. But those helped me identify who I was. And so I say get out there and try things. And I really do, and maybe a little biased about this, but I really think that asking for help and going out and if you are in a rural place where you feel stuck, go to somebody to talk to, and whether that's a therapist or a peer, because the power of peer support to me is you can't match that anywhere else. So get out there and learn what you can do. Unfortunately now rehab stays are very small, or very short. And when I was in rehab, I fortunately had the opportunity to forge relationships and bonds with people. And then other people coming back into the hospital that had been out, living in the community for 5, 10, 15 years. We had that opportunity to learn what is possible.
Yeah.
So for people now that have shortened stays that go out into the community without those bonds already established, I would say make those bonds, make those connections, become part of the community, so that you know what is out there and what is possible.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Catholic Family Services of Simcoe County is a registered charity offering professional counseling, psychotherapy, and mental wellness education. The Mature Minds program connects older adults to community services and supports them through the process.
Catholic Family Services has been part of Simcoe County for the last 40 years plus, and we offer a variety of services. What we're most well known for is our walk-in, where people can come and access free counseling services. We also provide more extensive counseling for those in need, and we have community development with Youth Call and my passion, Mature Minds. Mature Minds started because the Archdiocese of Toronto wanted to meet the needs in our community in a really practical, researched way. So they asked a consultant to find out what the needs of older adults in the community are. They discovered that we have a large population of people who identify as lonely and isolated, and we wanted to address that. We wanted to show people that they are valuable, that even as they age, and especially as they age, they still have value to contribute to our society. We started with some of the programs looking at what the community needs are. And so we started partnering with some local parishes and going beyond that because we are inclusive of everyone. Anyone can access our programs. And so we wanted to address loneliness in people's homes. So we asked people to visit, to be friends, to make friends and make connections. And then we found that there's lots of people who won't self-identify as lonely or isolated, but do want to develop skills. They want to tell their stories. They want to be known. They want people to know that they're valuable. And so we started a slow cooker club. People could learn how to cook food in a slow cooker. Couple meals. They learn different meals over 6 weeks. They come together in a social environment and learn skills. From there, we grew and came to an understanding that one of the things that people need to learn about is ageism. And so we started ageism as the base of what we do in everything else. Ageism is prejudice against our future selves. It's actually the only prejudice that's against ourselves, but it's discriminatory behavior. It can be stereotypes about people because of their chronological age. We focus on age, people getting older, but the reality is that we're all aging. If you're not aging, you're dead. So we'd rather be aging. We also see that people need to know that they're valued, but that people don't have an understanding of ageism. It's a spectrum. There's some people who think that it's just another one of those buzzwords that the new generation has come up with, and some people who know it but don't have a name for it. And so we address ageism first by bringing awareness. We do presentations about what it means to grow older and to grow old valuing age, to have a positive perspective on aging. And that's really what it comes down to, is we value people. In my end with Mature Minds, I want to know who you are. Tell me your story. And as you get older, you still have a story. You're still valuable. In the counseling end, they can help you figure out the how and the why of who you are. That if you want to go deeper and become a better version of yourself, you can access both ends. We want to know you. And so that's where our programs come up, is that we understand that ageism says you're not worth knowing. And we say that's wrong. You are. We want to know you. I want to know you. I want to hear your story. One of the myths about aging is that aging is the end, that you become invisible, that you're not important. It comes back to that value, that because you're older, you have nothing to offer to society, that we call a group of people senior citizens, but focus on a senior and not a citizen, that we say the elderly and put people in a group. And if you're 17 and a group of 17-year-olds, there's going to be more diversity in a group of 70-year-olds because they have so much more experience. And so oftentimes I think that one of the myths is that people who are older have nothing to offer. And we know that that's not true. We also see there's a cross-section between ageism and ableism. There's a myth that says that if you need to use assistive devices, like a walker, or if you need help getting dressed, then you have less value. And that's also just not true. When I think about aging and mental health, there's a couple of things I think about. The reality that there's still stigma around that word, mental health, especially for older adults. There are people who, to address their mental health, it's not something that they grew up seeing presented in front of them. And so now they do. The other part of that piece of aging and mental health is that because we live in a society that has such a negative view of aging, a multi-billion-dollar industry of stopping aging, of anti-aging creams, of you disappear in the movies and in the media. With all these things, there's an aspect of mental health where it's hard to have health and well-being when you have a negative view of yourself. I think there's the standards. There's the standards of transportation. There's the standards of communication and what people know and what they don't know. But underlying it all is a sense of shame. There's a shame in not knowing what you think you should know. There's a shame in not being who you thought you once were and not knowing who you are. And that goes beyond Simcoe County. That's across really Ontario and Canada and in different parts of the world. And so we want to address that. And again, it comes down to value. We value you. You're a person worth valuing. And so if we can address the shame, then we can address the what. If we can find out who you are, then we can address the what do you need. if you're having a hard time getting on a bus because you don't know how the bus runs, and you feel ashamed that you don't know how, we can address that and then help you get on the bus. If you feel ashamed because you don't know how to address housing, we can help you do that. We can help you fill out a form, but first it comes back to addressing shame and then addressing the what do you need in order to know that you are a person of value. We know the pandemic has shifted things. We're all rebuilding and regrowing. We've served in a different variety of capacities, again, to let people know that they're valued in a variety of ways. We got to partner with Barrie Police in Valentine's Day. We had 3,000 cards made from students across Simcoe County to deliver to older adults. Addressing those beliefs about aging starts with ourselves. It's internal. When you look in the mirror and you see a new wrinkle, do you kind of squint and shrug and wish it wasn't there? Or do you embrace it? When you yourself do something when you're hurting and you say, oh, I'm hurting, I must be getting old, ask yourself, what do I mean by that? And when you say, my knee hurts, it's old, well, does your other knee hurt? Because it's just as old as the first one. So it's asking those questions internally. When you see someone driving by, is your first thought, oh, they're going slow, it must be an old person. If you're asking those questions and saying those things to yourself, if you can address those things in yourself first, then you'll be able to recognize it more. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Mature Minds is open to everyone. If you have a need, we want to try and help meet it. You can call us. We're inclusive. Anyone can come and join us. We want to know you. And so you can call us, you can email me, and find out about all of the programs and services that are available to you. And if you want to come and hang out at the office, come. If you want to come and go deeper, come. Just call. People can call our main number and they'll be directed to any service that they need. Anyone can call. Our services are inclusive. Or you can send me an email and I'll respond.
CFS also offers volunteer opportunities for those who are interested. Seniors who are interested in counseling can call to book an appointment today. Thanks for watching this episode of Underestimated. Thank you to our guests for sharing their experience and expertise. To learn more about the services and resources Cortree and Spinal Cord Injury Ontario provide, visit our websites. I'm Tory Bowman on behalf of Oda and all our guests. Thanks and see you next time.